If I was stuck on a deserted island and I could only take 5 books with me to make me a better writer, which ones would I take? More on that now. What's up, guys? Michael Laron here with Author Level Up, helping you master the craft of writing. And I make these videos because I believe that each of you has an inner Stephen King and you just need help unlocking it. So if you're new here, subscribe and click that little bell, ding, 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 to get notifications every time I have a new writing video. And in this writing video, I'm responding to a question on one of my recent videos by Andrew Crispin. And Andrew asks, if you were a beginner writer and you were stuck on a deserted island for a year, everything was provided for you and your main objective was to become a better writer, what 5 books would you take with you to help you become a better writer? List off each book, telling us why you chose them and what subject matter of writing is geared towards help. Andrew, that is such an insightful question, and I'm glad you asked. You know, it's interesting. I had to spend a couple of days thinking about this one because I was like, what am I going to take with me? So if I was stuck on a deserted island and when I come off the island, I'm the next Tolstoy, what would I take with me? Well, you know, honestly, I would not take any writing books with me, believe it or not. And the reason I say that is because the writing books that I've read, and I've read a lot of them, I've internalized them. So I know what the knowledge is, and I really don't need to reread them per se. You know, I could talk about Writing into the Dark or Goal, Motivation, or Conflict, or, you know, Hero with a Thousand Faces, but, you know, I'm not going to reread those when I'm on a deserted island. And then I also thought, you know, I'm probably not going to take any novels with me either. Mainly because, you know, I don't want to be in the middle of a deserted island and start reading a book and then hate it and have to throw it in the water, you know, or I'm not going to reread my favorite novels again and again because that would be kind of boring. So what would I actually take with me? And I thought about this and I thought, you know, the biggest challenge that you would have if you were on a deserted island writing books all day, aside from food and water and survival, you know, would be coming up with creative ideas and keeping your creative well full, because it could get really boring and it could get really tedious and you could lose touch with the real world, I suppose. So my books are geared toward helping me stay creative and helping me hone my craft in a different way. First book I would take is Garner's Modern English Usage. This is a great book. It is a doorstop book. I mean, it literally could be a murder weapon. I own a copy of it. And I've never had time to sit down and read this book. But it is a manual to English usage. So certain words in the language, certain phrases in the language. It gives you a background on how they came into existence, what the correct way to use them is, and some examples from modern writing. I've always thought the book is interesting. You know, I don't really have time to read it right now, but I think that, you know, if I read a couple of pages a day, it would definitely help me with my style. And that's something that I always want to improve. So I would definitely take that with me to the deserted island. The next book I would take is the biggest art encyclopedia I could find. So just the biggest book I could find with as many artists represented from as many countries, from as many periods, from as many styles. When I started my career, one of the first things I did that was very helpful in inspiring my creativity was looking at paintings. So there was a website, I don't even remember what it was, but you could click on it and it would give you a random painting every day. And you would get, one day you'd get Art Deco, another day you'd get like Renaissance, another day you'd get, you know, like avant-garde or whatever. And I always enjoyed looking at those paintings and trying to describe what was in the painting, like to try to sharpen my senses of perception. So how would I write, you know, a painting from a Greek painting on a Greek urn? How would I describe that in a story? You know, and that was always very helpful for me to, like I said, sharpen my writer's eye, sharpen my perception. And I think that that would continue to be very helpful and also help me keep in touch with the real world. The third book I would take would be a poetry collection. So poetry, I love it because it helps me think differently. It inspires me, helps me stay creative. And so I'd take a poet that I haven't had a chance to read that much of his work, and that would be Charles Simic. So a friend gifted me one of his poetry collections once, and I really liked what I read. And I thought, you know, it'd be kind of a good time to maybe read a poem a day from Charles Simic. And kind of figure out some things and stay creative. So, you pick your poison on what poetry collection you might take to the deserted island. But for me personally, poetry is very inspiring to me, and it challenges me to think differently about how I describe things and about how I tell my stories. The fourth book would be a subject matter book geared toward what I write. And so I write urban fantasy primarily now, and so I think it would be really cool to take a book that teaches me about cities. So there's a book that's been on my list for a while. It's called The City in History by Lewis Mumford. It's like a 700-page book, and it's about the history of cities and how they evolved into what they are today. And I think that would be a fascinating thing to read and internalize when I'm thinking about writing my own cities on this deserted island when I write my urban fantasy. And so I think that's interesting just because there's something to be said about setting being a character in your story, and what better way to do that in urban fantasy than to make the city feel lived in. And not every urban fantasy writer pays a whole lot of attention to the city, and so that's something that I think I could use to help me become a better writer and write cities that are more engaging, in addition to writing more engaging characters. So to turn this around, I would challenge all of you to think about what are subject matter books in your genre that you can read that are maybe a little bit boring, a little bit sleepy, but that could give you some sort of a benefit in terms of making your stories more real. In the last book I take, this is completely self-indulgent because I couldn't think of any other writing books to take. I would take The Complete Sheet Music of Ivan Lins. Ivan Lins is a jazz musician, Brazilian composer. I argue one of the greatest jazz musicians who's ever lived. I'm a chord guy when I listen to jazz. I absolutely love chords. That's what gets me excited about any song. And his chord progressions are some of the most complex that I've ever heard, and just absolutely beautiful, and I love them. I love him as a composer, and I'd probably take a guitar with me and a piano, and just because I can't write all the time, right? So I'd probably sit on the beach and play some jazz music. But yeah, that would be my fifth book. And ironically, all those books are not writing books at all, and I think that that's important because while I'm writing, I'm gonna be on that beach. I'm gonna be thinking about writing all the time, but I can't write all the time. And so how do I stay inspired? How do I stay engaged with what I'm doing? And then how do I stay connected with the world? And I think that's an important lesson whether you are stuck on a deserted island or not. So that's it for this video. Don't forget to subscribe. Thank you, Andrew, for the question, and I will talk to you guys in the next video.